In the tumultuous theatre of 12th century Europe, where thrones were seized as often as they were inherited, few individuals wielded influence as deftly or enduringly as Eleanor of Aquitaine. A queen twice over, first of France, then of England, a duchess in her own right and the mother of 10 children, Eleanor stood astride an age of crusade, courtly love and dynastic upheaval, yet it is her role as mother and political strategist, particularly in relation to her sons Richard the Lionheart and John Lackland, that defined her most consequential legacy. Through diplomacy, resilience and strategic acumen, Eleanor shaped not only the fate of the Plantagenet dynasty, but also the broader political fabric of England and continental Europe. Her influence over Richard and John, by turns affectionate, calculating and formidable, offers a rare lens into the ways maternal power and personal will intersected with medieval geopolitics. Before delving into Eleanor's influence over her sons, it is important to grasp the sheer force of her political identity. As Duchess of Aquitaine, Eleanor brought with her a vast and wealthy territory in southern France. Her marriage to Louis VII of France dissolved not just over the lack of a male heir, but over clashing temperaments. Eleanor's political ambitions and autonomy rankled in the rigid Capetian court. Her subsequent marriage in 1152 to Henry, Duke of Normandy, and later King Henry II of England, forged the Angevin Empire, a dominion stretching from the Scottish border to the Pyrenees. It also marked the beginning of Eleanor's true political significance and her lifelong struggle to navigate the dangerous waters of dynastic succession. Of her 10 children with Henry, Richard and John proved most pivotal. While Eleanor clearly favoured Richard, the tension between maintaining dynastic unity and managing the ambitions of her progeny became a defining test of her power and legacy. Richard, born in 1157, was the archetype of the warrior king, charismatic, brave, and loyal to a fault. But beneath the chivalric gloss was a man deeply shaped by his mother's instruction. During Henry II's reign, Eleanor supported the rebellions of her sons, most notably the 1173-74 revolt, in which Richard, alongside his brothers Henry the Young King and Geoffrey, took arms against their father. Eleanor's support for this rebellion, motivated by Henry's attempts to curtail her authority and undermine her son's inheritance rights, resulted in her imprisonment for over a decade. Yet Eleanor's incarceration did little to dim her political instincts. When Henry died in 1189, Richard's accession marked her re-emergence as an active and central figure in the political life of the realm. She orchestrated his smooth coronation and deftly navigated the initial turbulence of succession. Far from merely celebrating her favoured son's rise, Eleanor laboured to secure the Angevin dominion during Richard's prolonged absence on the Third Crusade. It was Eleanor who collected the massive ransom for Richard's release after he was captured on his return in 1192. She personally travelled to negotiate with Emperor Henry VI, securing her son's freedom with the same steely resolve she had exhibited during her youth. Her determination not only cemented Richard's hold on the crown, but reaffirmed her own authority. Eleanor had become, in all but name, the Regent of England. More subtly, her guidance had shaped Richard's diplomatic sensibilities. Though often regarded as a warrior above all else, Richard's pragmatic dealings with rival claimants, including his truce with Saladin and later with Philip II of France, reflect a flexible statecraft, one likely moulded in part by Eleanor's own hard-won lessons in courtly diplomacy and continental politics. In contrast, Eleanor's relationship with John, her youngest son, and the eventual inheritor of the throne, was more complicated. Nicknamed Lackland because he was not originally slated to inherit significant territory, John embodied the contradictions of weak legitimacy and overreaching ambition. Eleanor favoured him in earlier years, securing an advantageous marriage to Isabella of Angoulême and defending his interests against his older brothers. When Richard left for crusade, it was Eleanor who restrained John's machinations and prevented his early attempts to usurp power from spiralling into civil war. Perhaps the most critical moment in Eleanor's influence over John came during Richard's imprisonment. Despite John's alliance with Philip II and his schemes to claim the crown, Eleanor intervened decisively. She denied him the support of the English barons and conveyed a clear message: the Plantagenet crown would not pass to treachery. Her ability to mobilize loyalty in defense of Richard and later to reconcile her sons in the interest of dynastic unity demonstrated the high-wire act of her maternal diplomacy. Yet Eleanor's support for John later resurged. After Richard's death in 1199, she strongly backed John's accession over the rival claim of Arthur of Brittany, Geoffrey's young son, and arguably the legitimate heir under primogeniture. Eleanor's decision was shaped partly by political practicality. Arthur, though legitimate, was a minor under the influence of French interests, while John, for all his faults, could serve as a vessel for maintaining Angevin power. Even in her later years, Eleanor did not retreat from political life. In 1200, at age 77, she undertook a perilous journey into Castile to escort her granddaughter Blanche for a marriage alliance that would help solidify peace between England and France. Her actions during this period suggest a woman whose understanding of continental diplomacy remained razor-sharp and whose commitment to her family's legacy was undiminished by age. Eleanor's influence over Richard and John was not merely dynastic, it was ideological. She imbued them with a sense of entitlement to rule, of destiny shaped by inheritance and merit. She served as a mediator between the competing imperatives of justice, vengeance, and power. With Richard, she encouraged martial valor tempered by political pragmatism. With John, she navigated his weaknesses and missteps, reinforcing his legitimacy while attempting to contain his worst impulses. More broadly, Eleanor helped stabilize England at a time when the Plantagenet grip on their continental holdings was slipping. Her efforts to preserve the integrity of the empire, particularly Aquitaine, her ancestral domain, underscored the reality that she remained more than a queen mother. She was a political actor in her own right, one whose decisions carried consequences far beyond the domestic sphere. Through her patronage, she also shaped the courtly culture that defined much of European aristocracy in the 12th century. Her court at Poitiers in the 1170s became a crucible for troubadour poetry and chivalric ideals, influencing everything from diplomatic language to conceptions of gender and power. This cultural legacy, interwoven with her political one, helped define the ideals that Richard carried with him, and that John consistently failed to embody. Eleanor died in 1204, outliving both Richard and most of her contemporaries. Yet her legacy endured, not only in the physical territories her efforts preserved, but in the conceptual framing of queenship, motherhood, and feminine power. She proved that maternal influence could reach beyond the nursery into the chambers of state. She wielded loyalty as a weapon, not a reward, and understood that emotional ties could be leveraged for political ends. Her mediation between Richard and John shaped the trajectory of Plantagenet rule, ensuring temporary unity in times of crisis and allowing the dynasty to withstand the buffeting winds of crusade, rebellion, and foreign intrigue. That England emerged from this period not fractured but consolidated owes much to Eleanor's steadfast presence behind the throne. Moreover, Eleanor's influence resonated in European politics for generations. Through her daughters, she connected England to the courts of Castile and Sicily. Through her example, she redefined what it meant to be a queen consort and queen mother, not passive symbols but active agents of statecraft and cultural power.